Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we will cover the home teams, New Orleans Saints, the Lsu Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave. We will shelve basketball this week because it is opening season for both Tulane and the Saints. We have about 16 days before LSU will kick it off against Mississippi State. Tonight, joining us on the program, does a great job for Fox 8 Sports covering the Saints and all teams. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is with us. Sean, how are you? Busy time. We were just talking before the show. It's hard to believe, finally, through everything we've been through, football kicks off this week.
I was just thinking of what the last time the Saints were on the field and on that January Sunday, what's happened since then.
Wow.
It really feels like an eternity ago. You know, think of the Saints, you think of LSU winning the national championship. It just feels like ages ago, and now here we are. It's game week. It doesn't feel quite the same because we haven't had that normal off-season training camp, preseason where you're just so ready. This is a little more of an unknown just because you haven't really seen much of other teams. But nonetheless, we're here. It's game week. Let's go.
And the unknown really eked into the teams as well, right? I mean, you saw, normally, and look, well, we saw the first cuts to get down to 80. Saints cut players. They got gobbled up quickly by other teams. But this time around, Saints really stuck with their players that they had in camp, and that was the theme through the NFL. Staying with the players that know your system this time around. We didn't see a lot of teams picking up other players off waivers.
Yeah, it really didn't. And the Saints, none of their players that were waived were picked up by other teams. And Mario Edwards, he wasn't waived. He was technically cut. He signed with the Bears, but other than that, they were really able to waive the players they needed to waive and bring back basically all of them with the exception of a few to get to that 69 number of players. We talk about the 53 plus a 16-man practice squad, which is obviously a huge asset this year given the times that we are in. So, a lot of people, a lot of teams felt like they just kept stayed in their comfort zone with the players they knew. It really goes to show you just how much they live and die by the tape. And if you don't have the tape,
that's right,
you're not going to go sign
a guy. And COVID-19. You don't want to introduce somebody new in your locker room, again, that maybe have been somewhere else, even though that person may have not have tested positive. But again, I'm sure that they were worried about, keeping their semi-bubble intact as well going forward. Not to say that if a really good player was out there, they wouldn't have grabbed him. Of course they would have. But for the most part, you're right. No preseason games. You really you didn't have OTAs or mini camp. You kind of had to stay with the guys that you've been dealing with at this point. And I guess it comes down now to how good is your player personnel group, because the group that you have is the group you're running with right now.
That's it, the guys you're rolling with. And you knew something was really different when you saw all these other teams. Reporters in those markets were not allowed to say first team, second team, third team, because basically other teams were relying on us, our reports, to kind of get an idea, I guess, to see if what we reported matched what their grades were on certain players throughout the draft process, the free agent process. So that was an interesting dynamic. But for the most part, no one else signed any of the Saints players that they waived. So I guess we weren't quite as detailed as we needed to be for the teams to come and pick up guys.
And believe me, Sean Payton was probably glad about that.
He was probably happy about that.
Because he loves to be tight-lipped as it is. But with that said, this has been really strange for those covering the team as well. Only a few reporters allowed on an ongoing basis. I think there were 14 total reporters that were allowed, and then, again, those were broken off into a kind of pool reporters and then pool cameramen. I rely a lot on the preseason games to be able to break things down as you do, looking at the film every day. But again, you're at practice normally day in, day out, every single day. So, when people say, do you have a final 53? I would say, hey, no, because I have not seen a play. And that is that the coaches had to deal with. This is more like a college type situation where, again, you got your team, and now you have to get that team ready, and you have to do it without preseason games.
Yeah. And look, I live and die by the NFL calendar. This is my way of life.
Sure.
I live by the NFL calendar, and I normally do a weekly roster projection: who's up, who's down, who's on, who's off. It's generally different phases: first week of camp, first preseason game, and then every preseason game after that. That didn't happen. That's why I was only able to do one preseason projection, or one pre-camp projection, one post-camp projection, and that was only based off of 5 practices that I was able to witness. And look, I'm thankful because I was one of the few that was able to actually witness practice.
Right.
I was the first wave of practice, and plus I got a bonus day the following week, so I'm grateful for that. But and everything else came off of just conversations with people that I spoke to around practice, that were at practice, saw practice, read things, and did my best. And look, this was a year where I think the guys that deserved to be on the roster it was pretty obvious. I mean, I had 49 out of 53 correct, but it was one of those situations where you're not armed with the same amount of information that you normally would be heading into a regular season. And I don't know who that favors. Some say the Saints, and I get that, but still, these are totally different circumstances that you just don't know how every team's going to react.
I 100% agree. And a lot of times you're able to see young players during the preseason, but you also have the off-season workouts, mini camp, for them to be able to digest the playbook in the classroom and then take that to the practice field. You didn't have that this year. It was you had a training camp that maybe had 14 days of padded practices. How much can you hit? How much can you harden that body? I fully expect soft tissue injuries and very sloppy football to start out. I'm interested to see again how teams adjust and can adjust on the fly as well, because I think that's also going to be part of this, because who has game film?
No one has game film, and look, under the best set of circumstances, early football is bad.
Right.
Under the best set
That's
of circumstances,
true. Really,
early football is bad.
First 3 weeks are
First 2 or 3 weeks
Right.
are not good. You just go back. I know the Saints season opener last year was entertaining, but every game other than that was terrible last year, the season opener. So you can probably multiply that a little bit this year, just because, as you said, there was no gradual leading up to this. All of a sudden, you just had practice and games, practice games. So we'll see. But I do think on the surface, the Bucs and Saints look like a pretty impressive season opener for NFL fans.
I would agree, and we'll get to that in a moment. The season as a whole, and I hear this from other analysts, and I'd like to get your take. There are some that say, man, look, this is a wild card. I can't give you predictions. We know who we believe are the best teams in the NFL, but there's so many variables out there right now, from COVID-19 to the preparation for the season. Does the cream rise to the top this year, or will we see some wild card teams out there that because of what we're seeing right now, that maybe they break out?
You will, for 2 reasons. One, remember, 7 playoff teams this year. So there's an extra playoff team. So that's another team that's going to be in the mix in the postseason tournament. And B, you don't know how it's going to go with COVID-19. You don't know how it's going to go with different protocols, new protocols in place. how that impacts certain players. Not to mention the traditional things that hold a team up. Injuries, chemistry, that sort of thing. So you're adding a couple new layers here that, yeah, I do think there's probably a team out there that we're not looking at right now as a contender that's going to end up being a contender by the end of the year.
Yes.
So we'll see how it goes, but I want to get started so we can kind of get the feel for the routine in this life with COVID in the NFL. Because like I said before, I'm a creature of the NFL's routine. So I want to get into this so we can see how we deal with this throughout the season.
No doubt about it. Saints will be playing for their 4th straight division title, but I think it's going to be tougher to repeat than in past years. And one of the reasons why is, look, Atlanta has a tremendous amount of talent, and they never seem to be able to get it together. Call it injuries, whatever you want to call it. Tampa has had a tremendous amount of talent, but they haven't been able to get it together. They have Tom Brady as their quarterback now. And look, Carolina is with a new coaching staff and, again, new quarterback, etc. So, maybe, again, their progress won't be as quickly as we'll see with other teams. But we just talked about there could be a wild card out there. But this is going to be a much tougher division, in my opinion, than maybe what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I think it's, look, the Saints have dominated the last 3 years. It doesn't necessarily mean the division wasn't talented. Last year, Atlanta beat the Saints, their worst effort of the year. And that was, at the time, I believe Atlanta was probably like 2-7 at that point. It was a crazy record that they had at that point. And they came in and looked like the team that their talented on their roster showed. Atlanta was the team, Chris Hagan and I do a podcast, that I picked as kind of the sleeper, as a team that's talented enough to make a run. And if they get it all together, I think they can make a run. If they can stay healthy, and they need to go back to the scheme in 2016 that they used, because that's where Matt Ryan flourished. But I'm not their coach. I don't know. But nonetheless, this division is going to be tough, because I think at some point, if all goes right with Tampa Bay, they're going to catch a streak at some point in the season, and they're going to be on a roll. And you just hope at that point the Saints are rolling as well, and maybe they got a little bit of cushion to get to the finish line.
No doubt. Well, let's talk about what had transpired over the weekend. Saints get down to the final 53 on Saturday. By Sunday, they had 15 of the 16 expanded practice squad members. Of course, 16 players are on that expanded practice squad. Now 6 veterans. 4 of those can be frozen, so they can't be poached by another team. 2 players can be brought up on game day. And 40, what is it? I believe I heard you say this. 40 of the 53 players that made the final cut have already worn a Saints uniform. So not a lot of turnover.
43.
43.
43 was the number I came up with.
43.
I have to go back and check. That's just anyone that was in the Saints locker room last year.
Yes.
So that doesn't even include Malcolm Jenkins.
So that's 10 new players, really.
So that's what, about 80%? So that's 80%. Well, you'll take that every year in the NFL.
You don't get that kind of turnover? Yes.
On a good year, you're losing, 20-25% of your roster from the previous year. So just from free agents. So the continuity is there. And that was probably why it was a little easier to do the roster projection, because it was pretty clear who was making plays. And this was not the year to play around with, okay, he's a veteran, vested vet. This is not the year to play around with that. This is a year, A, you don't know the circumstances are going to be crazy, and B, you want what you know so you can make a run, because it's Super Bowl or bust in 2020.
Oh, there's no doubt. And even Breeze talked a little bit about that yesterday, right?
Yes.
Okay, almost like being on borrowed time, so to speak. Any surprises?
I didn't see much. I mean, the Blake Gillikin situation, but you knew that was going to be. That was sort of a way to sort of massage and keep a guy, because apparently there was interest from him from other tears around
Washington
the league.
had not put a punter on their roster.
It was some kind of crazy thing like that. They didn't waive him. They kept him. Now he's got an injured back. He's on IR. IR is going to be such an interesting thing this year, because it's unlimited and it's 3 weeks. That is going to be such an interesting thing to watch. Now a guy with an ankle injury, you can put him on IR now, as opposed to juggling the roster that you've had to do in years past. That might be something that sticks around. Maybe not unlimited IR guys, but perhaps a 3-week thing. I'd
love to see, and this is just me, the expanded practice squad stick around.
I've always wondered why is it? It's not in the NFL's best interest to have guys sitting on the street and get a call in mid-November to come play. Why not have these guys in an organization somewhere that they're ready to go? And I would expand game day rosters. We'll see when that time comes. I agree. The 17th game.
And look, the veterans that are on the expanded practice squad are making about $12,000 a week. Now that's less than what they would make probably on their normal salary. But at the same time,
nothing.
Right, exactly. They got jobs,
Make
right?
something, right.
The only problem would be, again, if you're a vested veteran and you're frozen on that roster and on that practice squad, and you're not able to move to another team to be on their active roster. That would be the only thing, from if you're looking at it from a veteran standpoint of saying, man, look, I'm on this practice squad making $12K. I could be making my salary and being on the active roster on another NFL team. That's where
But you could also be very easily sitting on your couch as well.
Agreed.
If you're not on a practice squad, just waiting for the phone to ring.
No doubt about it.
Catch 22, but I lean on the side of security if I'm a veteran.
I would too. I'll take that 12K.
A guy like Morgus Hunt
Yeah.
right now, it's on the practice squad right now. I mean, I think he's going to contribute at some point this season. But a guy like that, if he got waived, wasn't claimed, he's sitting on his couch right now. Instead, now he's in a camp.
And to your point on him, he has surprised me. And then I mentioned this on my radio show on Monday, that when you look at it just from a financial standpoint, okay, you get a chance now to keep a rookie on your active roster, as opposed to maybe a veteran that you could keep on your expanded practice squad. All of a sudden, that salary cap is a little bit lower when you start talking about, of course, the top 51 is kind of thrown out the window, but as far as what you're keeping on your active roster.
Yeah, it's a way to save some money. And if you got a guy that's you don't think is going to contribute right away and he's a veteran, then perhaps you can juggle a roster that way. Sean Payton warned us. He said, good luck with keeping up with the practice squad transactions.
Yes.
It was kind of done half-jokingly in his conference call, but I think I see what he means, because there's a way to kind of bend the rosters here and call up guys and send guys down, and it's going to be a flurry of moves. And I'm very curious. It may have come within the next couple of days, just in terms of who's up, who's down, who's on the practice squad. It's all kind of craziness.
For those that again didn't keep up with it, Joe Banshee, the undrafted free agent out of Michigan State, is on the expanded practice squad. Anthony Chiquillo, veteran. Andrew Dowell, Benny Fowler, veteran. Garrett Griffin, again, tight end / halfback. Keemon Hall, Lil Jordan Humphrey. You mentioned Marcus Hunt. Jawan Johnson, Tony Jones Jr., Tommy Stevens, the 7th round pick, Calvin Throckmorton, Cameron Tom, guard center, and Keith Washington Jr. They've added since then Austin Carr, and I believe they have one more still available.
No, they signed one yesterday. It was a defensive end. His name escapes me right now, so I think they're full at 16.
So they are full as of this point on that, and then of course the final 53. All the rookies made the. All the draft choices made the team. Ruiz, Braun, Troutman, and of course we just mentioned Stevens now on the expanded practice squad. You kind of figured that was going to happen with at least the top three, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I know they love Troutman. Ruiz is banged up right now. We'll see, his status going forward, playing at that guard position. At least that's what he was listed at on the depth chart. Zach Bond's an interesting one. Where does he settle in? Does he start? Is it a situation where is it game plan where he's basically a guy that's a sub rusher on the field on third down and get after the passer, a guy that can give you some reps that way? I'm very curious to see how he shapes up, because I don't see it yet as that off the line of scrimmage linebacker. He's a Sam linebacker, a guy to get after the passer. So Tommy Stevens was an interesting one. I thought they'd keep him around just because of how hard they fought to get him, and the Panthers' interest in him. And when you waived him, that was the team you worried about getting.
Yes.
Didn't happen, so they were able to bring him back, because I liked his development. I think he's got a ways to go, but I liked his development. I liked his attitude. He's willing to do anything. So that's one to watch as well.
I want to go there for a moment, because Taysom Hill is the backup quarterback for this team, and Jameis Winston is the third stringer. If Breeze was to go down and miss time, is it Taysom Hill or is it Jameis Winston? And if it is Taysom Hill in your mind, does that mean Tommy Stevens moves into Taysom Hill's role, or is he going to stay at tight end?
Well, let's just put it all out on the table right now. There's only one Taysom Hill.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of teams trying to get the next Taysom. There's only one Taysom Hill. As Drew Brees told us last year at the start of training camp, there's only one Taysom Hill that can do that many things that well. Now, in saying that, can Tommy Stevens be a guy like that? Maybe, but he is truly a tight end. In regards to your question about backup quarterback, I am leaning towards, especially if it's a short window. Let's just say it's a 2-week injury for Brees.
Okay.
Taysom Hill, because keep the ship afloat. You can probably tailor it to where that suits his strength in terms of the run game, the passing game. He's probably not gonna make as many mistakes throwing the football. I think Jameis Winston is up there with top 2 or 3 in the league in terms of arm talent, and he can make some wild plays, but he's inconsistent. And it showed up in the camp practices that I was at, and the people that I spoke with that were at the practice that I was not able to attend. They said he definitely grew within the offense, but it's definitely some inconsistencies there. He probably needs some seasoning within the offense, but also I think this is a little bit of who he is.
Yeah.
So right now, if it were to happen, and we hope it doesn't,
sure,
I think it would be Taysom to start. Now, if it started and it was a longer stretch of period of time, maybe, and he wasn't doing well, maybe they would go with Jameis at that point. But that's just my opinion. I don't know that for sure. But I do think there was something to having Taysom as that number 2 on the depth chart listed.
If there was a player that was hurt by a lack of preseason, lack of off-season workouts, minicamp, it is Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
To me, Jameis Winston would have had a chance to be able to showcase himself, not just to the team, but to the rest of the NFL. He would have been able to work in this system. He would have been having an off-season with Drew Brees, with Sean Payton, hands-on, working on the mechanics, etc. You didn't see that. You went into this full-blown training camp trying to learn the system on the fly, and of course not getting an opportunity to do it in games. And again, that may be another reason why we're seeing Taysom Hill as the second stringer here instead of Jameis Winston.
And with Jameis, it's all about what he does in games.
Of course.
I mean, every field he's ever been on in his life, he's probably had the strongest arm of anybody there. It's not his physical gifts. It's not his physical traits.
Right.
I mean, he checks all those boxes. Can move, got a strong arm, can throw a great deep ball at times.
Yes.
It's all about his in-game decision making, and you lost that element.
Right.
You know what Taysom can do in a game. You don't know what he can do with 55 snaps at quarterback as opposed to 5, but at least you have a sample size. You don't know what Jameis will do in a game with the Saints. And the only way to know that would have been preseason. And by the way, I wanted preseason for Taysom as well because I wanted to see both those guys with the first team.
I agree.
I think that's the missing piece to both to the puzzle here.
Sure.
We haven't seen it.
Right.
So I still think there's a little bit of a dilemma life after Breeze, but for the time being, I agree with you. I think Jameis not getting those in-game situations with certain players, I think hurt him because I think we would have been able to see where he's at mentally in terms of his in-game decision making because, look, that was all the problem last year in Tampa Bay. I mean, he made some plays that made you go, wow, and he made some plays that made you go, what was that? I mean, I watched the old Saints Tampa Bay game last year on the road. And I mean, the interception he threw to Marcus Williams, I don't think it's the easiest interception Marcus Williams had in his life. But then again, he made a great throw in the home game to Chris Godwin for a touchdown. That's just been him his whole life, his whole football career, professional football career. Right. So I would agree with you. It didn't happen, so they march on without that piece of the puzzle.
No doubt. All right, Breeze met with the media yesterday. Different tone a little bit from Breeze. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you heard and what you took away from the conversation with Breeze yesterday?
Kind of felt like he was in a little bit of a different state of mind of, I don't know if maybe mentally he's there. This is it.
This is it.
I don't know if I got that vibe last year. I think it's a little more, you feel it a little bit more with him now. That line about being on borrowed time and let it rip was a phenomenal line to begin with. But it also kind of, it was an honest moment. Breeze is very genuine with us in the media, at least with us locally. I think, I think there's a bit of a realization that this is it. I'm appreciating the journey. And he always, for the last few years, he's kind of had that reflective mindset. But I think this year you really feel it, that this is probably going to be it.
Sean, how much of the controversy off season has maybe pushed him to think that, you know what, it's this year or bust, and it's time?
I would say that probably played a role, somewhat of a role. Now, I'll say this. He's having a blast at practice. You see him running around with his teammates, doing the handshakes, the high fives. He looks like he's genuinely enjoying his time. So any sort of tension that was out there earlier in the summer and in the offseason, that's all gone. I mean, some of the biggest teammate critics that you saw are now high-fiving, hugging, all that stuff with Breeze on the practice field. I think that's all gone. But I think it also goes to show that, perhaps they're in a little bit of a different era now in the NFL, and he's a little bit of a throwback now. Right. You don't realize how quickly that comes for you.
I realize how quickly it comes.
But look, I had a moment today I'll tell you about later, but it happened for me too. But look, when you get there mentally, I think it does a number on you. Right. And look, I think, what happened in the offseason, it'd be foolish not to think at least that had something to do with where he's at mentally right now.
I want just a little bit off football for a second and it's something I'm going to talk about on my radio show today. What I don't understand is the vilification of Breeze by people, some in this fan base. I don't. Again, with everything that has happened off the field, the stickers on the helmets, etc., and the fact that this guy, this individual, and his wife and his family, what they have done for this city for 15 years, and his time in New Orleans, what he has done in terms of charitable organizations, giving his time, putting his name on things. There was a time when everybody talked about him. He could be governor of the state. He could be mayor of New Orleans. He could be anything he wants. And there's a segment of Saints fans, or the population out there, that have turned their back on Drew Brees. I saw something on Facebook the other day. Now, it was a cheap Brees jersey, looked like a children's Brees jersey being burned. Please, I do not understand it based on the body of work this guy has done on and off the field for this city and this organization.
Well, look, I mean, and it's from both sides, right? It was people that will never forgive him for his national anthem take.
Right.
There are people that are now never going to forgive him because they felt like he caved or whatever the situation is. The sticker on the helmet. I get it in terms of I don't get it. What I mean is you can't worry about that if you're Drew.
No.
You just got to roll with it because
exactly.
you can't please everybody. And I think he's a guy that understands that now. And I think that's part of the tone you heard a little bit is like, look, man, I'm at the end here. I'm at the end.
Right.
If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I'm here to play ball. He still gives this team the best chance to win a Super Bowl. And I would just challenge everyone out there to say this. Just imagine the last 15 years in New Orleans without Brees and how different it would be. And would we be as good as we are now, or would we be worse? I mean, so that's where I'm at with the Drew Brees situation. It's really it's a tough spot for him to be in, but this is probably a good indicator that this is probably it.
I would agree. On one hand, I say, man, how can you have this dome without fans in it? On the other hand, I say to myself, I surely would have hated to hear fans in that dome booing that guy. Okay, even if it was a small section of fans booing him based on what he has done for the New Orleans Saints. And now again, I will say this: as this team starts winning, he's playing Drew Brees ball.
That's all of it.
Fair weather fans, they'll be jumping back on the bandwagon.
Look. When Brees is Brees, and he's going to have a moment where he's vintage Brees in this building right behind us. They're going to slowly make their way back. It always seems to happen.
It just, again, for me, watching, and again, a guy that has been watching this team since 1967, I know the low lives of this team, okay? Yeah. And when you ask me, and you ask the question, where would this team be without Drew Brees? Well, there probably wouldn't be a Sean Payton still, okay?
Where would the city be right now? Where would the city be right now?
There probably would not be a Super Bowl win, okay? And you wouldn't have the greatest time in Saints history that we're seeing during these 15 years with Brees at the helm.
And let me just say this. This is just my theory, my opinion, but it's developed over the time I've watched this organization, been in and around this organization, the winning stretch here, this organization.
Sure.
When the day finally comes that he says goodbye and he's done, I think we're all going to realize just how much the organization leaned on him. Yes. How much he was, so much went through him.
There is no doubt.
And what he was responsible for.
Right.
So
on and
I
off
would just
the
say,
field.
on the field, off the field, this is his last year. He's at that peace of mind right now where he's just like, I'm just going to let it rip. Let it, cut it loose.
Yep.
If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't.
Yep, no doubt about it. Sean Fazende is our guest tonight from Fox 8 Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, here from our underwriters, and we'll be right back.
Air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration has been family owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhardt's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports joins us on the program. Sean, we normally do this at the top of the hour, but my DVR is set on Fox 8 every evening. Talk a little bit about some of the great shows you guys have.
Well, Friday we'll have a Fox 8 football. Friday, high school football. It's an interesting time right now, but it looks like I spoke to a coach last night. They're getting excited because they finally got the green light here in most parishes to go ahead and do their thing. So that's 10:30. Sunday, we have our Fox 8 tailgate from 10 to 11, and the final play at 10:35. Monday, the Black and Gold review at 10:30 with Juan, Deuce, and myself. And Tuesday, Fox 8 overtime at 10:35 as well. Here we are. We're in full season, full in-season mode, and we're locked and loaded, ready to go.
Speaking of overtime, that's his day every day now, all the way until February and past that. Pardon me. Malcolm Roach, Marquez Callaway, undrafted rookie free agents make the team.
Two guys they like.
Think that they'll contribute? Is this going to be guys that will be they will be inactive on game day?
Depends on the numbers at certain positions. I don't know if they're going to be everyday game day active. I know Marquez Callaway can give you some special team snaps if need be. I don't know if that's enough to get him on the roster when you have special teams guys like JT Gray, Justin Hardy, and Craig Robertson still on the roster. It's a guy I like. He's got some potential. He can really stretch the field. Malcolm Roach is an interesting one. They're pretty deep at the defensive tackle position, so perhaps that's a guy that they just wanted to protect. They want to expose him to other teams and perhaps get signed. So I don't know that both those guys contribute right away, but I could be wrong. I don't know if those guys are going to be active on game day.
Kiki Alonso on the PUP list, and James Hurst, the lineman from the Baltimore Ravens, will start the season on the commissioner's suspension list for violating PEDs. 4 games for him. Let's talk about Cesar Ruiz, because ankle injury going into his first game, was thought to be the center when he was drafted. They felt more comfortable putting him in at right guard. You're talking about now getting into an NFL game for the first time, speed of the game, the hardening of the body that has to come, normally in preseason, that really didn't get a chance to do during the training camp. And then, of course, now trying to do this maybe possibly on one leg, with or at least hampered by an ankle injury. Not a good recipe for success for Ruiz. And as a start, Nick Easton backs him up. What do you think that situation will be?
That's something to monitor because he's been banged up, was not able to practice Wednesday. So it's certainly something to monitor. He's a rookie who's caught on really quickly. He's been a starter from the first day of camp since he's been out there. And that's not always easy to do. Sometimes you got to work your way in there. Eric McCoy wasn't even the starter on day one last year. Nick Easton was, and he quickly took over that role. But still, he started with the second team and worked his way into the first team, whereas Ruiz, without an off season, basically is learning everything virtually, without minicamp, without rookie minicamp, and the extended training camp, came in and was ready to go. I never saw a moment where he looked completely confused, or I can recall one day where there was a stunt where Demario Davis was able to get past him. But for the most part, he's held his own. They want him to be the starter, but if he's not ready to go, they have full confidence in Nick Easton that he can get the job done.
Yes. Let's talk about the linebacker position. My buddy Scott Craig constantly talking about the linebacker position on my radio show. Caden Ellis starting at the Sam, backing him up, as you mentioned before, Zach Bond. Talk a bit about that. And then Chase Hanson makes the team, converted safety, backing up at the will now. Talk about those players.
Yeah, I thought it was either Chase Hanson or Joe Bocci. I thought it was pretty clear those were the two that were going to get that last spot in the linebacker role when it became pretty clear that Kiko Alonso was going to start the season on PUP. Caden Ellis is interesting because that's a guy, in college, played all over the place. You kind of forgot about him a little bit last year because he was injured so early. Can give you special teams value.
Right.
I think he's certainly good in special teams. As a strong side linebacker, that's interesting. I think it's going to come down to situationally. How many teams do you play out of that base set, out of that 2 tight end set? And if the Saints, if you're Dennis Allen, you're throwing a different look. So how are you going to utilize it in pass rushing situations? Because sometimes they'll play 3 linebackers, but pull a D lineman off the field and get a better pass rush that way. But clearly it shows that Caden Ellis is a guy they like. I like him in coverage, at least what I've seen at practice. And a coverage linebacker, to me, he maybe is a little bit better as an off the line of scrimmage linebacker. But look, if they like him at the Sam, they like him at the Sam. I think it's clear, though, they think he's one of their 3 best linebackers, which is interesting because he's only his second year. Didn't play a whole lot last year.
Right. And of course, the Saints like to play a lot of defensive backs. So we may only see 2 linebackers on the field. When we do that, will it be Davis and Anzalone, or will we see one of these younger players?
No, it'll be Davis and Anzalone. That's 100% clear. Davis is obviously the best linebacker on the team, leader of that defense. Anzalone, when healthy, is the second best linebacker on that team. He's got great range. He can blitz if need be. Solid against the run. Has gotten better at disengaging when it comes to getting off blocks. So it will be those 2 on the field a lot, especially when you go big nickel, the light nickel, whatever the situation will be. They're probably going to have 2 linebackers on the field a lot. Now, if they go dime, perhaps they take one of those guys off, but it'll be Anzalone and Davis on the field a lot at the linebacker position.
Saints never went after another outside corner. They stayed with the players that they had within the building. Again, Patrick Robinson will be backing up on one side, Justin Hardy on the other side. P.J. Williams is also a guy that can move in there in a pinch. None of these guys are really outside corners, especially when you talk about P.J. Williams and Patrick Robinson. P.J. Williams has shown his ability to go play safety if necessary. That surprised me, that they didn't go out and try to get another guy that could swing from left to right, that could back up in case there's an injury to either Jenkins or Lattimore.
I don't think they're done looking, though. I think that's a situation where they'll monitor as the weeks go on. If that becomes an issue, then they will address it. They will never just allow themselves to be that exposed at that position. I do think if they had to for a game or 2 use P.J. Williams on the outside, they would do it. They feel comfortable in doing that. We know he's a nickel, but his situation, C.J. Gardner-Johnson's getting a lot of the nickel snaps.
Right.
I think that's more of a game plan thing, because if it's a bigger receiver, I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson's probably better suited than P.J. Williams. But if it's a shorter, quicker receiver, I think P.J. Williams is better suited for that role than C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So there's some flexibility there with the type of nickel that you play versus certain matchups, who you use in those situations. Who do you use to guard tight ends? Is it Malcolm Jenkins? Is it C.J. Gardner-Johnson? And how do you adapt to those situations? I do think you have a lot of versatility, and while you don't have a true, I guess, outside corner, you have some guys on the practice squad that you could possibly use, and I also think they would trust P.J. Williams in a pinch if they had to.
You mentioned practice squad. Keith Washington is a guy that I kept hearing a lot about. Your thoughts?
Boy, what a 180 for him, because the practices I was at was bad. Bad. Terrible for Keith Washington. All of a sudden, the second week I go, he gets 2 interceptions. It was the worst I've ever seen for the quarterbacks. That was the day Drew said I was really windy outside. And then I didn't see any other practices. Then I'm just watching and reading the reports. Keith Washington interception, Keith Washington interception, Keith Washington interception. You make plays, you show up, you got a chance. That's why he's stuck on the practice squad. Had he played in preseason games and done that, and they waived him, he would be on another roster now.
There's no doubt about that.
So I think Keith Washington is a name to monitor should the situation arise. But right now they're good. I like their outside corners. They were very good. It's probably going to be a man-to-man team, Eric. A very sticky man-to-man cover team. Their corners are better in man-to-man situations. And more importantly, Marcus Williams is better in man-to-man situations where he's the help defender as opposed to picking up a guy that's getting passed off to you.
You read my mind. That's where I'm going next. This is a huge year for Marcus Williams. It's funny. We talked the last time you were on this program. Our view of Marcus Williams is different than the view of maybe people on the outside looking in, right?
Nationally, I think when you think of safety on a national level, they're probably thinking free safety. They're probably thinking pass coverage. And he's been decent when it comes to pass coverage in certain situations. And if you graded it all out, he probably comes out positively from that national lens. We see the every down play. And, you don't think of a free safety as a run stuffer, so perhaps if you're nationally grading, you're not necessarily factoring that in. But we saw the plays where he missed tackles that led to touchdowns.
Well, that's the Achilles heel.
And he worked on that this offseason. I don't know if it's going to show up in the games, but I hope so. We won't know until we know. But he's got to get that shored up because he's got great range. We'll have a film study on. We had a film study on last night on Marcus Williams. His range in season opener last year was a phenomenal play.
Yes.
Not every safety can make that play. So there's some rare traits there in the passing game that he's an asset. But if you constantly give up big plays by not tackling, that's a huge hole in the back of your defense as well. So it's a push-pull with him. He's got to get better at tackling.
The emergence of Gardner Johnson last year, and of course the way Von Bell was developing, I was surprised they went out and got Malcolm Jenkins. Jenkins comes in now. One of the main reasons why we keep hearing is the cerebral part of the game, his ability to be able to get guys lined up, which was a problem last year, and has been a problem with this young secondary. What's his role on the field? Is he going to be there on first and second downs? Is he a guy that comes out on third down on passing downs? I know they want to play him a little bit closer to the line. You mentioned covering tight ends. Is that Gardner Johnson? Is that going to be Malcolm Jenkins?
I think early it's Malcolm Jenkins. Now I saw a lot of great plays from the secondary. I saw one or two from Malcolm, and it wasn't like he was making great plays. He got beat a couple times, but in a training camp where the secondary really shined, I don't remember writing down great play Malcolm, but it doesn't necessarily mean he was playing bad. It just means I didn't see a lot of the big plays that you would see when you follow the ball watching practice. Now, it really all depends on, is it better, like we mentioned before, it's probably going to be game plan, matchup specific. Is it better to have your third corner be a guy like P.J. Williams, or is it better to have your third corner to be a guy like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, or is it better to have both those guys on the field and C.J. becomes your strong safety and P.J. becomes your nickel, and perhaps Malcolm Jenkins essentially becomes another coach? I don't know. We'll see. I think it's going to start with Malcolm Jenkins covering the tight ends. He did that pretty well last year in Philadelphia, so we'll see how it goes. But that was something I was thinking about when I was watching practice. That could eventually be an adjustment. It's probably not going to be there that way on week one.
And look, I go back in my mind's eye, and I remember when the Saints needed a play against the Philadelphia Eagles, they went at Malcolm Jenkins. Yeah. So, I mean, again, early in his career, you could say, a guy that was kind of a tweener. When he went to Philadelphia, he became much more of a more refined player. But you catch him on the back end of his time in the NFL.
33 years old. Played a lot of football. He's part of that 09 class with Thomas Morstead. So, I mean, he's played a lot of football, and he's been durable. There's
no doubt.
He's been available, and he's played some of his best football later in his career. But it happens to everybody, so we'll see. Has he lost a step or not? I don't know. We'll see when the games start.
Comes down up front for this team. You got to be able to put a pressure on the passer. I've been talking about it all week on the radio show. To me, if you look at the NFC South, it's going to be pass rush from the inside out. When you talk about Matt Ryan, you talk about Bridgewater at Carolina, now Tom Brady at Tampa, and of course Breeze here in New Orleans. All pocket passers, don't like to get outside the pocket if they don't need to. And the pass rush from the interior is going to be something that I think is going to be needed on each one of those teams in the NFC South. With that said, talk a little bit about Onyemata, talk a little bit about Rankins, and then the chatter out there that Rankins has been on the trading block.
Yeah, and apparently that's been pretty prevalent over the last couple of months. It just hadn't, I guess, reached the media level at that point. I guess somewhat, it was not necessarily surprising considering they signed David Onyemata, considering all the contract years that they have, considering the salary cap likely deduction next year, and who the guys you have to pay and what your situation is going to be like. So if you get a deal, perhaps he's someone that if you were to call up and say, well, you know what, they would have interest in, and you could survive that position because you have good depth there at this time. So right now he's with the Saints. He's their best three technique D tackle. He can get up the field and rush the passer. So he's certainly got a role, and he had a really good camp.
Yeah.
But if that deal were to happen, I don't think anyone would be surprised because his name's already started to float out there, and it certainly feels like in NFL circles it's been out there for a while as well. You weren't going to trade for him in the offseason. He's coming off a back-to-back IR season. So he's a guy that he's got to stay healthy for a long stretch of time because when he is healthy, I think he's a very good defensive tackle for this team.
And look, disruptive. Both him and Onyemata disruptive up the middle, which is what you're looking for. Once again, Marcus Davenport lands on the injury list. This time it's an elbow. This is a critical year for him. When you mentioned this on my radio show yesterday. You give up 2 number 1 picks for a player. They need to start showing again that they're worth that value.
Yeah, and look, he's never had a clean bill of health. He's always been a little banged up here and there. Feels like every time he kind of catches his rhythm a little bit, boom, an injury happens over the first 2 seasons, and here we are. dealing with an injury. We don't know the severity of it. Hopefully he's back and he's ready to roll, and he gets his ability to get on the field and be a consistent player. Part of that, the injury, it's hampering his progress because he is a guy that, coming from where he came from, he needed a little bit of fine-tuning, and to get that fine-tuning, you just need the reps, the repetition, be on the field. And it hasn't necessarily happened or hasn't necessarily been as smooth for him in that regard. So I can understand where there's a little bit of frustration with his health, but B, because he seems to be a little banged up, he's missing valuable time where he could get better.
Yes.
And that's what they draft. You don't draft that position and make the move the Saints made to get him and not expect some return on your investment by year 3.
Right.
So it has to happen.
Carl Granderson, wild card here?
Yeah, I think he's the guy that, he got big. Man, he put on some weight. Looks good, but he got good weight. In other words, to handle the rigors of a 16-game season, not slowing him down. Because, man, I'm telling you, there were 3 or 4 plays where Kamara, Taysom Hill, they tried to get to the edge. He set that edge, beat him to the sideline. He's got some range, got some athleticism, had quite a few sacks during camp. So watch Carl Granderson. That's a guy, he had some issues in college, but him coming back, he could be a guy that you watch and they can get into the rotation really quick for the Saints.
Let's talk about the quest for Jadeveon Clowney and how that kind of played out. The attempted NBA-type sign and trade by Mickey Loomis and Kai Harley was nixed by the NFL, reported to be a second-round pick and a player that was thought to be Rankins, paying Clowney $10 million a year. They only had about 10 under the cap. They could spare. The extra $5 million, because he wanted $50 million, would have come from the Browns. In that trade, the NFL nixed that. I told you this on the radio show yesterday. I remember, and you started bringing up other players. I went, whoa, no, I forgot about I brought up Josh Norman because I remember the infatuation with Josh Norman by Sean Payton. He needed Josh Norman, wanted Josh Norman. Then he didn't get Josh Norman, but Josh Norman never really turned out to be the player. That he was an ascending player, but really kind of leveled off. Clowney, when you look at the statistics, man, his statistics for the first 3 years pretty much mirror what Davenport has done in 2 years. It wouldn't be that
hard for Davenport to match that
There's
production.
no doubt in my mind they are the same player in a lot of ways, in my opinion. So again, I wasn't really excited or really wanted them to make the deal for Clowney. Give me your thoughts on how this kind of played out, because let's face it, when Sean Payton gets on a plane and goes to Houston to wine and dine somebody, normally he doesn't come back empty-handed.
You're right, and normally the competitive juices take over, and sometimes that leads to questionable financial decisions when that happens.
True.
They had a number in mind. They had an avenue they were going to try to get to meet that number in a very unconventional manner. The NFL nixed it. You read reports that he'd have gone to the Ravens had they allowed it. It's all kind of craziness. But nonetheless, the Saints clearly thought enough to go after Jadeveon Clowney. Again, he's never lived up to his name coming out of South Carolina, never quite been that top-tier pass rusher. If his name wasn't Jadeveon Clowney, I don't know that he would have the same allure right now that he's had. But nonetheless, you can never have too many pass rushers. And he's a guy, if for no other reason, put him on the field on third down, let him get after the passer in this situation. Is that worth the 10 or 15, whatever he paid or whatever he got? It's not for me to say. But sometimes the best moves are the ones you don't make. You mentioned Josh Norman. They signed Champ Bailey. They signed Adrian Peterson. Early in my career, the first story that I really broke, big story, was the Randy Moss workout.
That's right.
So they've done this before, and they've signed some guys. It didn't work out.
Right.
And they've held off on some guys despite bringing a guy in like Randy Moss. They didn't sign. Obviously, his best days were behind him. Different stages of their career, yes.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you sometimes the best moves are to just stand pat and let your guys develop. Because I don't think it's that hard. If Davenport is healthy for 16 games, he can match Clowney production.
You were all over the Kamara deal last week. You mentioned that your source had told that the Saints were offered about $12 million. There was a report out there they were about $2 million apart. Adam Scheffler has said multiple times this week that they are very close on a contract. What do you think happens?
Well, I like to say a deal gets done at the time we're talking now, the time of this taping. The deal has not been done. So I think the deal gets done at some point, probably before they start the season opener. I don't like reports like that, though. Like the Saints are close. Here we are 3 days later. How close were they? I mean, what does that even mean?
Exactly.
I mean, you're just reporting on the middle part of the process there. They're very close. What does that mean? I don't like reports like that. Is the deal done or not?
Right.
I tried to get some more information on numbers. I was unsuccessful in doing so. It happens. So we wait it out and we see. Hopefully it doesn't impact his mindset going into the game. I would say he's going to probably, once the game hits, the competitive juices take over, and he's the healthy Alvin Kamara that we've seen. So hopefully that is the case. But I still expect a deal to get done. If they're this close,
right.
I mean, what else are they really fighting over?
And they want it done before the beginning of the regular season. They don't want this thing to linger at all. Strengths of this team, I don't say weaknesses, question marks on this team.
Strengths of this team are this team. It's a deep roster, and it's a deep roster that's been together for a while with a ton of experience, a little bit of youth, talent. So there's nothing this group has not seen together. There really isn't. Think about it. Think of all the things that they've been through. The only thing they have to do is finish the job. The weaknesses on this team, name one. Is it hard to find?
The question, I would say there's a question mark at the Sam linebacker because of the youth of that position. Okay. Maybe Chase Hanson as a backup, if you want to talk there. Maybe if, again, in a pinch, but every NFL team's got this problem, that backup cornerback. But other than that, no. Three
backups with the exception of the Sam linebacker position. It's hard to find. I mean, you're talking about you may not even have your first-round pick ready to go week one, and you still feel good.
No,
so
it's a deep team.
It's a deep team. It's just a matter of getting in the games and win the games.
Executing, not making mistakes. And, of course, in the beginning, look, when you're as good as the Saints are, you don't want to stumble early.
Exactly.
Okay, you want to get off to a good start, and then, of course, you're starting off against a team that got a lot of unknowns. You believe Tampa was going to be a good team. I do. And I think they're going to be neck and neck with the Saints all year long. But, man, we can expect, like I said earlier, sloppy football, some injuries maybe early. Tell me, to break down this game, Tampa Saints, Sunday, empty Superdome, 325 on Fox 8.
There's a lot of different ways you can go with this. I'm looking at stats yesterday. I didn't realize Tampa's defense is probably a little underrated. They were really good against the run last year. And if you don't have that element to your offense, that's certainly something that you have to be mindful of. There's no guarantee they have the same run defense. I think they're vulnerable in the secondary, and I think the Saints wide receivers over their secondary is a clear-cut advantage where if you flip it, Saints DBs versus their wide receivers, especially if Mike Evans is banged up, that's a little more of a push. So I like that. A lot has been made about you don't know how Tom Brady is within this offense. How does he use certain players? I did a film study, you'll see it Sunday, on Chris Godwin, and there's a certain way they used him with Jameis Winston. Do they use him the same way? You don't know. He had a great game against the Saints at home last year. So I like where the Saints stand in certain areas, but there's always that little bit of uneasiness because of the unknown, and you just get into the game and kind of figure it out on the fly, which this coaching staff is certainly experienced enough to do.
No doubt. They can make adjustments. They've proven that. Let's shift to Tulane. They open up their season Saturday night at South Alabama, 6:30 kickoff. South Alabama has a win under their belt, beating USM last week. Look, everything we hear about Tulane is they're taking the next step. Now they got 6 grad transfers that are going to immediately going to contribute. The O-line is a little bit of a question mark. Keon Howard is a question mark. But defensively, they're going to hang their hat on this defense and the ability to run the football.
Yeah, like their running backs, like their defense. Keon Howard is certainly someone. It's not like he's walking in there blind. No. He's got some starting experience. So you like that. He certainly has. He's been saying the right things. Certainly has done the right things. But I like where this program is right now. I really do. We talked about it on overtime the other night. Let's get out of this bowl eligibility talk. Let's get into the conference championship talk here. Let's start. Bowl should be the minimum now. You've shattered that barrier.
Agreed.
And you know what? Good for you. Because I've long believed that you can do that at Tulane. And I think you're starting to see the fruits of a successful coach sticking around, which you can really do. Develop some continuity over time.
Great point.
So let's break that ceiling and let's talk about conference championships. Don't know if it's going to be this year. Don't know if it's going to be an annual thing. But let's get Tulane in this conversation a little bit, because that's where this program is. You're starting to see a little bit in recruiting. They're getting some quality recruits.
Absolutely.
And because when Willie Fritz's first full recruiting class here, he only had 2 Louisiana guys. That's changing.
Yes.
He's getting some guys locally that can certainly help this program.
And look, we've been the all offseason. It's been about Keon Howard. They're going to live and die with the progression of Keon Howard as a quarterback.
Yeah, I think you're right. You had situations last year. The quarterback play was up, it was down. If he's just consistent, and and he has an identity. And if you're a coach like Will Hall, you figure that identity out quickly and tailor your offense around that. I think you can win with a guy like Keon Howard, but he's not going to be the type that takes over a game and consistently wins you games week in and week out. I don't think that's going to be the case.
He just can't get you beat.
Exactly. And we saw quarterback play last year that got them beat.
Right.
So even that out a little bit, and I think you'll be fine, even if he doesn't give you the top end talent.
Finally, the LSU Tigers. Look, I don't know. I mean, people ask me all the time, how good is this Tiger? I don't think we know. I think we think they are very talented, the top 22, but they're very young now and inexperienced. So I think we won't know until they get on the field with all the defections that we've seen.
If they have success this year, two things would have happened. They stayed healthy. They only have I thought I counted up yesterday, it was 68 scholarships.
Yeah, it was 70 and they
68 scholarships. Let's just say 68 to 7. It's 15 less than you normally would have.
That's incredible.
That's huge in terms of depth numbers.
Right.
So
especially in the SEC.
So exactly, 10 SEC games.
Right.
So if they're successful, they would have gotten a little bit lucky when it came to injuries and COVID and that sort of situation. And B, as you mentioned, a lot of young players, a lot of first and second year players have stepped up. So that's that, and obviously Miles Brennan is the guy we think he is.
But you cover these guys. You see these guys on Friday night playing. They got talent on this team.
Oh, talent is never a question.
Right. It's just inexperienced.
It's just inexperienced talent, and when the lights come on, you just never know.
Right.
I've seen many a great player out here on Friday nights that all of a sudden in college football it just doesn't pan out. It's just a different world. You just don't know. So to have to consistently rely on those type of players to have success, a little bit of a gamble, but I think you recruit these guys for a reason. You saw last year with Derek Stingley, instant contribution. There's going to be guys that contribute right away. Keyshawn Bootsy comes to mind. Coy Moore from right here at Rumble High School comes to mind. And look, you got a quarterback that's never started a game.
Right.
I like where his head's at. I like where his head's at, and your freshman back. I like where his head's at right now, but again, like the Saints, we just want to get into the season and see how the flow goes.
Yes.
I want to see that with LSU because I want to see how Miles Brennan's going to react when live bullets start falling.
I agree with you. And how much confidence will Orgeron have to go deep within his roster if he has to?
If he's forced to do so, he's got to do it.
Right.
You recruited these guys for a reason. Some of these guys are not ready as freshmen.
Right.
And sometimes you play a guy too early that shatters his confidence. Some guys are ready, and then they get in and they just become a star because they got the early time.
Yes.
You just don't know. And, like I said before, if you're below 70 with scholarships, that's almost like getting
that's like
NCAA penalty almost.
Right.
I mean, that's not easy to overcome. So you're going to need a little bit of luck.
Yeah, that was like Tulane when Willie Fritz first came here.
Right.
Okay, remember, they didn't have a lot of depth.
Right.
And now, again, you mentioned it, 10-game SEC schedule. And a physical SEC. That's the thing, that attrition will be a big part of this team as well.
Yeah, and you're going to need some luck health-wise. Yeah.
Right.
I'm very curious to see who the leadership becomes because there's a lot of big, strong presence guys that are not there this year. Somebody's got to be that guy.
No doubt. Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports. Before I let you go, Saints, Tampa Bay.
I'm going to go with the Saints, close one. Relying on Will Lutz in the end.
There you go. And Tulane, South Alabama. You know what? I'm going to pick Tulane because I think Tulane's the better program, even though South Alabama's got a game under their belt.
I like it.
Thanks for joining us tonight here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. You can also see us across South Louisiana. That's 9 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television, and now Saturdays at 5 p.m. If you're a night owl, Saturday mornings, 2 a.m. on WLAE-TV 2. Catch all the previous episodes of this program on the WLAE-TV YouTube channel, also at ericasher.com. Don't forget, you can catch me on the radio, 5 to 7 p.m. weekdays on 106.1 FM, WRKN. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. Also, don't forget the TuneIn Radio app and the iHeartRadio app. You can listen live there as well. Again, special thanks to Sean Fazende for joining us. Also, our fantastic underwriters who, again, support this program, keep this program on the air, and the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Tommy O'Connor, and my director, William Hill. For Sean Fazende, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.